All right, diving in. You guys have really outdone yourselves this time. The stuff you sent over. Wow. Articles, research, even some pretty out there theories,
Yeah.
all about psi.
Yeah, you know telepathy, right? Like when you just know what someone's thinking. Or clairvoyance. Seeing things beyond the normal physical world. Stuff that really makes you question what we know, huh?
Totally. And that's exactly what we're going to do today, this deep dive. We're going beyond just defining psi. We're taking a totally different route through something called whole systems theory.
It's a big part of the material you sent. And it might just blow some minds wide open when it comes to how we think about these abilities.
I'm ready to have my mind blown because, let's be honest, the way science usually tackles a big mystery, it's all about breaking it down, right? Like getting super granular, looking at all the tiny parts, trying to figure out how each little bit works on its own. Reductionism, they call it.
Right, exactly. But what if that's not the right approach for something like psi?
Yeah, the sources you send make it sound like that's kind of like trying to understand, I don't know, a whole symphony just by studying individual notes.
Perfect analogy. Think about it, right? Telepathy. Direct communication between minds. No wires, no signals, just thought to thought. Or precognition, knowing something's going to happen before it does. That kind of stuff just leaps over simple cause and effect, you know? Like, reductionist models don't really cut it.
They don't. So that's what your sources are really pushing us to do here, right? Think
Yeah.
differently. Like, okay, if breaking things down into smaller and smaller bits isn't working for psychics, what is? What's this whole systems theory all about?
Well, in a nutshell, it's the idea that to really understand something, you can't just focus on its individual pieces, right? Like,
Yeah.
you got to look at how those pieces interact with each other, how they depend on each other. It's about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So, like with telepathy, instead of just studying one person's brain over here and another person's brain over there, whole systems theory is saying we need to look at the connection between them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the environment they're in, maybe even their intentions, like it's all one big web.
Exactly. And get this. One of the most fascinating things your sources bring up about, say, too, is non-locality. Scientifically speaking, that means two things can be linked or affect each other instantly, no matter how far apart they are.
Whoa, non-locality. That's some seriously heady stuff. Like, you know those times you think about someone and then they call you out of the blue?
Yeah.
Or you just feel connected to someone far away? I mean, maybe it's just coincidence, but your sources seem to suggest that maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe we need a bigger perspective to really wrap our heads around it.
they do. And this is where whole systems theory comes in, with this idea of interconnectedness. It's saying that maybe non-locality isn't some freaky, impossible thing. Maybe it's just a natural outcome of how deeply connected everything really is. Like, maybe distance isn't such a big deal when you're talking about systems that are fundamentally linked in ways we haven't fully grasped yet.
Okay, my mind is officially being blown. So we have the individual pieces, right? But then we have the connections between them. And out of those connections, something totally new and unexpected can pop up.
That's emergence, right? That's what your sources are pointing to as a possible key to understanding psi.
Exactly. Emergence. It's like, think about water, right? You've got hydrogen and oxygen. On their own, they're just gases. But put them together, boom, you get water. Something totally new that you couldn't have predicted just by looking at the individual atoms. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so applying that to sci-fi, could it be that things like telepathy, that direct thought transfer, or even psychokinesis, moving stuff with your mind, could these things actually emerge from this super complex mix of mental states, intentions, maybe even stuff we don't even know about yet?
That's the idea, like mixing ingredients, right? You need all the right ones in the right amounts, and boom, you get a delicious cake. Or in this case, maybe you get telepathy. Who knows?
Now we're talking.
Wow.
Okay, but your sources go even further. They bring up this information field, or like a kind of collective consciousness.
Right. Imagine it like a giant pool of knowledge shared by everyone that goes beyond our individual minds.
So it's like instead of all our thoughts being locked away in our own heads, there's this network where information can flow freely between us all. Kind of spooky, but also kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. And this is where whole systems theory is so helpful, because from a purely physical, individualistic point of view, a shared information field just sounds like crazy talk, right? But through the lens of WST, this information field could be an emergent property. It's like the collective, all of us together, becomes this bigger whole, and this shared pool of information is just a natural part of that.
So maybe psi isn't some special skill that some people have and others don't. Maybe it's just a result of all these complex interactions within this bigger system, like Our intentions, our beliefs, the environment, maybe they all play a role in these psi phenomena.
Absolutely. Your sources really emphasize that. They're saying psi might not be this neat, easily categorized ability, but more like a result of all these intricate relationships between different elements. And whole systems theory gives us a way to understand how those connections could lead to what we call Sazaya.
It really makes you rethink the whole thing, doesn't it? I mean, traditional science is all about isolating things, finding clear cause and effect. But this information field, this emergence stuff, it's just that we might be missing a huge part of the picture by not looking at the whole system.
Exactly. It's like trying to figure out how the internet works just by looking at individual wires and cables. You got to zoom out and see the whole network, how the information flows.
Right. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, like you said. Okay, so that brings up another big question. If our scientific methods are mostly based on this reductionist idea, how do we even begin to study something as complex and slippery as psi from a whole systems perspective?
Well, the sources do touch on that, and they point out that there's a lot of skepticism around psi, right? People call it unscientific.
Yeah.
It's hard to replicate consistently using our traditional methods.
Yeah, that's definitely a common criticism, like, show me the proof. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's not the phenomenon itself that's the problem, but our tools for studying it.
That's what your sources are suggesting. They're saying maybe the very nature of psi points to limitations in how we do science. Like maybe we need to embrace these more holistic approaches, systems-based approaches that are better suited to studying things that are interconnected, complex.
Okay, that is a huge shift in thinking,
Isn't it?
but also kind of exciting, right? Like the idea that our scientific understanding might need to evolve to truly grasp something like CI. So what's the takeaway here? How could this whole systems theory actually change the game for parapsychology?
Well, the sources are pretty optimistic, actually. They're saying by adopting whole systems theory, we can stop trying to shove psi into a reductionist box that might not even fit. Instead, we start to explore these ideas of interconnectedness, emergence. We recognize the role of consciousness and intention in this larger system, and that could open up so many new possibilities for research, right? Lead to a much deeper understanding by acknowledging that these phenomena are inherently complex and interconnected.
So we're not looking for a single psi gene or some special part of the brain that makes it happen. We're looking at the whole picture, the whole web of interactions, and the possibility that something amazing can emerge from that. Really makes you think.
It does, and it leads to a question for you, our listener. If looking at psi through this whole system's lens can give us all these new insights, could it also help us understand consciousness and interconnectedness in general? Could these principles have implications for how we see the entire universe, pushing the boundaries of knowledge way beyond just parapsychology?
Whoa. Mind blown. Seriously, this stuff is so thought-provoking. So thanks to everyone who sent in these incredible sources. This deep dive has been a wild ride. Until next time, keep those minds open and those questions coming.